Today we're going to talk about the true meaning of IRA. Most people know that IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. But one day I was going for a run and I realized that it really should stand for something different. Now, don't get mad, the powers that be, but I think that maybe it should stand for Internal Revenues Asset. Because at the end of the day, when you have an IRA or a 401k, all the money you see on your account statement, it doesn't belong to you. You only get to spend what's left over after you pay taxes. So again, the IRA or Individual Retirement Account, really part of that is the Internal Revenue Services Asset. So let's do a case study. Let's say that you start working at a company in your 20s and you work for a while, and then at age 35 you decide to leave that company, and in your 401k there's, let's say, 25,000 bucks. You leave that $25,000 invested, and 30 years later, at age 65, you decide to take that money out and spend it. So if we say that $25,000 at age 35 grew at 8%, compounding monthly for 35 years, or excuse me, for 30 years, at age 65, you'd have about $382,750. Sounds like a pretty big chunk of money, but ask yourself, of that amount of money, how much do you get to spend? How much of that really belongs to you? And the answer is not all of it. And depending on your situation, not much of it. Maybe. So let's just think about that and let's consider a pie chart. In the pie chart of your full IRA account, there's a chunk that belongs to you and a chunk that belongs to the IRS or Uncle Sam. And to oversimplify, maybe it's 30%. So between federal, state taxes, and other potential taxes, you get to keep 70% and 30% goes away. Well, 30% of $382,000, that's like $114,000 that on paper you kind of feel like you get to spend, but in reality you really don't. So that's one thing to be really cautious about. As you hopefully see your assets and your net worth growing, you've got to remember you only get to spend what's left over after taxes. It's almost like going to work. You have a job paying $50,000 a year. You don't get to spend that full $50,000. Maybe you get to spend $36,000. You have a job paying $100,000 a year. Same thing. You don't get to spend that whole amount. You get what's left over after taxes. And for your investments and your retirement accounts, it kind of works the same. AARP did a study and they outlined the 10 largest expenses for retirees. On that list was healthcare, there was travel, there was home maintenance, and a bunch of other things. For the average American, taxes did make the list. What I'm here to tell you is if you're a high income earner or a high asset builder, taxes are going to move up that list for you and could be a really significant problem. Again, in our example earlier, if a person has $382,000, they're going to write a check for $100,000 to the government at some point to cover the taxes potentially. But let's say you've accumulated millions and millions of dollars. Well, the math works the same. There's millions of dollars you could be giving away to federal, state, and other types of taxes. This does not even include secondary effects like your Medicare premiums being higher, unfavorable required distributions once you hit age 73 or 75, higher capital gains rate taxes, etc. So what's the bottom line? Remember, the IRA account balance you have does belong to you, but you have a partner in that you're going to have to share with at some point. And maybe you have to share 10% or 20% or 40%, but just know you don't get to spend the whole thing. So you've got to be prepared to pay the piper and pay those taxes someday. Now, here's the good news. Regardless of where you are in your life, there is a way to buy out the IRS or the state government from your retirement assets. You can literally satisfy their claim today and then enjoy the growth for the rest of your life and then get to spend that money later without having to give them a piece of it. So that's something we're going to cover in a future video. I hope you found this helpful. Remember, that IRA belongs to you, but you have a partner and you've got to share some of that asset with them someday.